Okay, well, good morning. My name's Nick Fountain. I'm with the Young Moore and Henderson Law Firm, and this is August 24, 2015. And I'm here on behalf of the History Committee of the Wake County Bar, and we are conducting a series of video interviews. And today it's my privilege to have the opportunity to talk with one of the legends in the Wake County Bar, and that is Mr. James D. Blount, Jr. This is the last time you'll hear me say James D. Blount, Jr. I'll be saying Jim from here.
Right, good.
But so we'll start in, Jim, with a few background questions, and we'll talk a little bit about the military. We'll talk a little bit about childhood and how you came to be a lawyer and how you came to be at Smith Anderson and how Smith Anderson came to be 100 lawyers or whatever it is today. But let's start off with Wilson, NC. If I recall correctly, you actually grew up in Wilson.
Right.
And Jim, I have to ask, do you think it's the barbecue or what? There's been a lot of good lawyers that were in Wilson when you were growing up and that have been in Wilson or from Wilson in all these succeeding years. It must be the barbecue.
That must be. I don't know what it is, but there was some good lawyers there when I got out of law school.
Yeah, well, I think many of the people that might end up watching this video will have some recollection of Judge Naomi Morris.
Yeah.
And that firm that she had been with,
right.
Lucas, Rand, Rose, whatever the other names were.
Right.
And then you, am I mistaken? Isn't your partner Sammy Thompson another Wilson person?
So is Ernie Simon.
And Ernie Simon as well. So you grew up in Wilson, and I saw in some of the material I have that you were involved in athletics, and that you were fortunate to have had as a coach Leon Brogdon.
Yeah.
And what do you recall about Leon Brogdon? People who don't know should know that he's, I believe he's in the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame. He did tremendous things in high school athletics.
He is. He was one of the great coaches of all time in high school. He was in Wilson from 1939 to 44, 45 when he left and went to Wilmington. He coached Sonny Jurgensen and Roman Gabriel in high school in Wilmington, and he had the first state championship we had in 1944
in Wilson.
In Wilson, that was his last year there.
Well, and he was recognized as a coach, but not just for wins and losses.
Yes. He was one of the most influential persons in my life. I've been often asked who was the most influential person other than my family, my parents, and he's right at the top.
Well, you were fortunate many times in life. There's an element of luck, and it was certainly some good fortune that led you to be on the ball team coached by Coach Brogdon. What kind of sports did you play?
Played football.
Football.
Yeah.
Well, did World War II intervene for you shortly after high school, or had you been to college, or what?
I went in the Navy right out of high school. Graduated high school in January of 1945. Went in the Navy in spring right after that.
And I guess fortunately for you, the war was, at that point we'd already had D-Day.
Yeah, I was in boot camp when it dropped the atomic bomb.
And that brought it swiftly to an end. So how long were you in the service?
Year and a half.
And if I'm correct, they quickly started discharging and shrinking the services.
Right. I got out in time to go to Carolina in about 46.
Okay, so from there you went on to college at what we call UNC Chapel Hill today,
Right.
Carolina.
Right.
And So when did you get out of there?
I was on a combined program where you could go to undergraduate school for 3 years and then go to your first year of law school, and at the end of that get your undergraduate degree and graduate in 2 more years. So I graduated from law school in 1952.
52.
I was in the undergraduate class of 1950, actually.
Okay. Okay. So that means, so you would have been in there at a time when there were a great number of returning World War II
I went to Carolina on a football scholarship and wound up getting my arm broken, and decided that was a different ball game than what we played in high school. I was there when Charlie Justice came and Art Warner and these fellows that had played pro ball in the service, and it's a different ball game than what we played in high school.
College is a fundamentally different game of football.
It is.
Than in the high schools, for sure.
Yeah.
So once you got out of law school in 1952, well, first of all, why did you go to law school to start with?
I didn't know what I wanted to do, and just decided that law school was a good background for anything I wanted to do, and so I went to law school.
Were you the first lawyer in your family?
Yes. Well, I had a grandfather that was my great-grandfather was a lawyer.
Okay.
George Blount in Wilson.
Okay. So where did you go to get started on a career in the law after you got out of law school?
After I got out of law school, I decided to go somewhere other than Wilson. I thought I could get to start better as a young lawyer somewhere other than my hometown, where everybody remembered me as young Jim. So I went to Rockingham with Tom Leith. He had some family connections. He was family connection with the Connors in Wilson. George Connor was his father-in-law, Judge George Connor. And so I got a contact with him. Tom Leith was practicing in Rockingham by himself, and I went as his first associate.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly familiar with the name of Tom Leith. I thought there was a Bynum there that was ahead of you.
He was in a different firm. We joined firms later on, but he was in a different firm when he was in with his father, Bynum and Leith and Blount. And then there was 2 other firms there.
I see. Well, that was, but Mr. Leith had quite a reputation as a lawyer.
Yes.
As well.
Yes.
And we already talked about lawyers in Wilson, but so you wound up being lucky to start out with a good lawyer.
But a good lawyer with a good reputation, and he was one of the most influential people in my young lawyer's life. He taught me to be honest, taught me to be thorough, and well, the first client we got a new client when I first moved there. And he left. We lost the client. I asked Tom why, and he said he decided I was too honest for him. He wanted somebody who would cut corners to help him get out of a business jam. And I decided that was a good reason to lose a client, because you're too honest for him.
Well, you're right about that. So then. So what sort of work were you doing? This would have been here we are in the early 1950s. Rockingham was a community with considerable textiles. I guess tobacco was also important there, like a lot of places in North Carolina.
No, tobacco was not important. Textiles were.
It was textiles.
Textiles were the. I went there. One reason I went there, other than to go with Tom Leith, was because of the labor law practice. I thoroughly enjoyed labor law in college, in law school. And I went there because he had a large law, for a small town, a good labor law practice. And it folded up when I got there. We didn't do much after that.
So you ended up doing what? A little bit of everything?
A little bit of everything. I did a lot of real estate work. I did a lot of wills, estate planning, corporate work, and very little litigation. Tom didn't have his litigation practice at all. I developed that on my own. And got along fairly well with it in a small town. You didn't have court, but once every four or 5 weeks, and four times a year, and I developed a practice defending insurance companies. And when I came to Raleigh, I was the only one who had a general practice. I could do more things than anybody in the firm in Raleigh.
Well, thinking back on it, do you think that having got that broad general practice at the beginning continued to pay dividends for you throughout your career?
No question about it. No question about it. Every lawyer ought to have a general practice. Ought to have start out with a general practice, do a little bit of everything.
I can't help worrying a little bit now. Lawyers get slotted early on, either by choice or by assignment in a law firm, and they don't have those perspectives.
Right. It was a tremendous advantage to know how to do a number of things.
At least helped you spot the issues when something came up. So from there, so how long then were you in?
18 years.
18 years.
Yeah, I practiced that until 1970.
70. Well, and so I'm going to digress right here because for a lot of people, certainly of my vintage that'll be watching this video, their first recollection of Jim Blount would have been through the bar review course.
Right.
But you were involved in that with Robin Henson,
right.
and at some point along the way, he had become a partner of yours in Rockingham also, right?
Right. He was from Rockingham, and when he finished law school, he went on to faculty at Carolina and taught there for 2 years and decided he was going to be as crazy as the other professors if he stayed there, and he wanted to come into private practice. And so he came to Rockingham with us, and he was one of the most influential people in my life. He was a true gentleman and a real scholar. He was a fine man.
Yeah, a real scholar.
He started that bar review course when he was teaching and helping the students get ready for the exam, and kept it up after he got in practice.
When, for the younger lawyers, this is at a time when there was no such thing as Barbary or Kaplan or whatever bar review classes people take today for the bar exam.
Right.
There was a point back there where there was a bar review course at Wake Forest, I think, and then you and Mr. Henson ran one that took care of most everybody.
And we had everybody for 18 years, 17 years.
Yeah. Well, of course, I went to Wake Forest Law School, but I took my bar review in Chapel Hill, and you and Robin Henson were the instructors on that. How did you manage to make that work and carry on without wrecking the law practice back in Rockingham?
Well, it was in the summertime, and things were fairly slow in the summertime, and we would just take one at a time. We go there, and we'd be one in Rockingham practicing and one to go to teach.
Okay, and so did you sit down with Mr. Cannon, who was then running the Board of Law Examiners, as to what all you were going to teach, or?
No. We just developed our own course and wound up being very fortunate to get some good cases that turned up on the exam fairly regularly. We had a good. It was a good experience.
So you ended up finding a lot of the material that you could be pretty sure they were going to have to use. Well, you did a tremendous service for a generation of lawyers through that.
It was a good experience for me too.
And well, did you find that, as other teachers have said, that the one who learns the most in the class is the person teaching it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you had to be ready for whatever was coming. And,
Yeah.
and you're sitting here with a room full of people at the Institute of Government, all of whom are 100% riveted on this information, maybe for the first time in their life.
Right.
They've got to have it, and they've got to have it now, and it's got to be right.
I had an experience one time. We split one night. I taught half of it, and Robin taught half of it. But the second half, I sat out in the audience, and I was sitting next to a young fellow, and he was very concentrating on what he was doing. And I said, you know, I believe it's easier to be up there than it is out here. He said, yeah, the downside risk is a whole lot less too. and it's the truth, it was.
So after the 18 years and after you'd been doing the bar review and all that, you made what for you was a major change in your life. And
I made the change before I taught the bar review course after we moved to Raleigh.
I thought there were some years where you were still doing it after you came to Raleigh.
Yeah.
So when did you come to Raleigh and why?
I came to Raleigh in 1970 because I'd had domestic difficulties, and Rockingham is no fun in any town but a small town. It's not fun at all. And Robin left the firm. Robin left to come to Carolina Power and Light, and that took away my best friend in the firm, and I decided I would be available to move, and went to see Dick Phillips one time I was in teaching the bar review course one summer, and went to see Dick Phillips, who was dean of the law school then, and told him I was not wedded to Rockingham. If he heard of anybody who wanted a young lawyer who had 18 years experience, and that February I got a call from Jim Dorsett saying that they were interested, and I came up. I flew up here. I used to fly myself. I flew up here and talked to Jim Dorsett, and they made me an offer, and I came in April of 1970.
Yeah, I recall that. Now, that firm had somewhere in here the tragic experience of losing Willis Smith.
That was after I came here.
And you were already here.
Yeah,
At that point.
I'd been here about a year and a half. I was in December of 1971. I came in April of 1970. So I'd been a year and a half.
And as we'll get to, your career became primarily litigation with Smith Anderson. But did you come to Raleigh planning on doing litigation?
I came to be a corporate lawyer. I came to take over Jim Dorsett's practice, who was going with Wachovia as their general counsel. And I was primarily a corporate and business lawyer, and thought that's what I was going to do.
But it's instructive then, perhaps, to young lawyers to think about how life can throw a person a curveball. You have, for a variety of reasons, you have pulled up stakes in Rockingham and come to Raleigh, think you're situated with a quality firm to do business in corporate work, and then there's a plane crash.
Plane crash on Saturday, December the 4th. And I came to the office on Monday, and I had 144 litigation cases I'd never seen before. And I was the only one in the firm who had had any litigation experience. I'd had right much in Rockingham. And
so there was little choice for you and relatively little choice for the law firm.
There was no choice. I had to do it.
And
if the firm was going to stay together, we had to do it.
So there's an old joke 6 months ago, I couldn't spell litigator, and now I are one.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's what I was.
So, and so here's 100 and some cases. Willis Smith had a tremendous volume of insurance defense work, one
Right.
kind and another.
Right.
And suddenly, here you are to do it.
Yeah, and I was interesting that every plaintiff's lawyer in every one of Willis's case called me and said it'd take whatever time I needed to get familiar with the cases. And don't worry about it.
Well, that's instructive too, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
And because I was getting ready to ask whether all the plaintiff lawyers jumped on you with a bunch of discovery and calendar notices.
No,
Didn't happen that way.
didn't happen that way at all. They all said take whatever time you need to get familiar with the cases. And I had 144 of them that I carried around with me everywhere I went.
Practically had to put a trailer on the car.
That's right. That's right. I carried them with me everywhere I went to get familiar with them, and eventually got them all worked out. And I became a litigator then. I had to get somebody to write my own will. I couldn't write my own will after that.
How many lawyers were at Smith Anderson?
I was number 5.
5. And
We started into 1972. Willis was killed in December of '71. We started into 1972 with 5 lawyers.
and a lot of work.
A lot of work. And now we've got 125.
Looking back on it, was there any difference in how much fun you had or the quality of the work between when you had 5 and when you had 105?
Yeah, there's a lot of different fun you had. It used to be a profession, now you're a business.
Yeah, and that's troubling that and one of the reasons we're doing this work like you and I are doing today is to try to remind folks of where is the professionalism and where's the fun.
Right. We used to have a good time. Now, no, you don't have it anymore.
Of course, at that point, we had the current rules of civil procedure. We had the current system of Court of Appeals. We had the current system of district court.
Came in 1970, yeah.
And so at the point where you get this load of litigation, you were faced with a similar system as we have today with our discovery and depositions and all the rest of it.
Right.
So, so what changed? How did things get from where they were then, even though you had discovery and depositions and the like?
We didn't do much discovery before the new rules came in. You take a deposition of one, called the adverse examination of the plaintiff, and take him, sit him down, listen to him, what he had to say, and that's about all you do. You didn't take witnesses' deposition. You cross-examine them from your seat of your pants. You know they were going to be adverse, and so you'd get ready to examine them, cross-examine them.
Well, and on that topic, I've had some lawyers tell me that they thought that you were as good or the best they'd ever seen at cross-examination. And so maybe we ought to turn here and talk a little bit about how you approached getting ready for and carrying out cross-examination, and what were the things that that you tried to keep a focus on that maybe caused other people to think you were pretty good at it.
I don't know how good I was at it, but I enjoyed it, and I just keep. I did it. He's going to testify against my client. Nothing he's going to say is going to be good. Didn't take his deposition, didn't know what he was going to say, but assumed it was going to be wrong or bad. And just go from there. I plan cross-examinations as I go along through the regular exam, through the direct examination.
So a lot of it you were, particularly in those early days, you were doing based on making notes while the direct's going on.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that's about all you did.
And that's, I think, useful to reflect on. There is a limit to how much you can know exactly what you're going to talk about and what you're going to ask about
Right.
before you're in it.
Right.
And sometimes we see lawyers who got virtually every question on an index card or on their laptop or whatever.
They can't do as good a job as you can do flying by the seat of your pants.
If you know the case, then you will be able to
Right.
Here as the material goes by and know that I've got to bore in on this.
Right.
So the litigation that you took over when you came with Smith Anderson, it was defense,
Defense altogether.
but it was a pretty wide range of defense.
Yeah, we had I had things ranging from GE, General Electric, product liability cases to automobile wreck cases. Had a case we tried against Carolina Power and Light, a claim growing out of a fire at a house. It resulted from a ice storm. From that to simple automobile cases to more complicated medical malpractice cases.
Over time, if I recall correctly, your career migrated almost entirely to medical malpractice, I think.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
I was at the right place at the right time. I was at the firm that John Anderson represented, the Medical Society, North Carolina Medical Society, and we had a medical background, the firm did, and we also represented St. Paul Insurance Company, who had all of the medical liability coverage at that time, and so we got a lot of that, and I fell into it.
And then the firm grew,
The firm grew.
and the batch of cases that had been all on your desk, the successors and the next ones, that you began to be able to place them with
Yeah.
others as others came.
Yeah, right. Sammy Thompson and Ernest Simons had some. Sammy Thompson had a bulk of them. And Jim Billings, I would just get them in and I'd just parcel them out. I keep the good ones.
So today there are 100+ lawyers at Smith Anderson. How many are on what was your team or whatever doing litigation?
Probably, litigation, there probably 15 or 20, but doing medical malpractice, there were only 5.
Right. But still, it's remarkable. I don't know what that is, a percentage increase, but from 1 to 15 or 20.
Yeah.
It's emblematic of the change in the legal profession, and because the bar in Raleigh's probably grown about that much too.
Yeah. The largest firm in the city when I came here was Paul Spruill, and they had 11 lawyers. That was a big firm.
Right. Yeah, a firm of 4 lawyers, 5 lawyers, or 6 lawyers like yours was not seen as by any means a tiny law firm back then.
No, that was a good-sized law firm, yeah.
And tell me what you've done or tried to do to preserve the collegiality and the rest of it within a law firm as the firm has grown and grown.
Well, I've just tried to get to know people as they come in. New lawyers come in, get to know them. They've outgrown me now. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2006 and have not been as active as I was. And I've tried to keep up with the young lawyers coming in, but they've left me now. I got some, I don't know the names now.
Right. Well, there was a time back there, I'm sure you felt like you knew not only their name, but the wife's name, and, and tried to keep up with how the kids were doing.
Yeah, right. We had parties at our house. We would have a firm party at the house. We would invite all of the young associates who'd come in during the year. We'd have them for a Christmas dinner. So they'd get to know us, and we'd get to know them and their families. And we did that for 25 years. Linda and I did. And it just got too big.
It gets to where it sort of outgrows the house.
It does. It does.
And so let me turn now. We're thinking about the house. Everything that you've done was not about trying cases or how many hours you could stay at the office.
No.
Tell us about some of the things you've done. Well, let's talk about with the bar and professionally. Firstly, I just see from your resume you've got a lots of accolades and the like. But tell us some of the things that were important to you with the bar.
Well, I chaired the bench bar committee, the first one that started the bench bar repartee between the lawyers and the judges in the bar. And I chaired the first committee that started that, and it's now going good. That was a good thing, and I also headed up the centennial campaign for raising $1 million. We raised almost $2 million for the Bar Foundation. And that was a good experience, traveling all over the state. Lawyers are the most generous people in the world.
You don't always hear that from charitable bodies, that lawyers are not, some of them talk about it's extremely difficult to get money out of lawyers, but you didn't find it to be the case.
No, they were very generous.
And you know, I believe that endowment is now up in the range of 6 to 8 million with the increases over time, and that's even through this recent recession we've had that's gone on for several years.
Right.
Yes, you did tremendous service for the bar in that regard. You were also active in the Association of Defense Attorneys.
Yes, it was the local in North Carolina. I was on the first board of directors of the North Carolina Defense Lawyers Association, and also active in the International Association of Defense Attorneys.
But through that, you didn't pigeonhole yourself as only a defense lawyer. You continued your connections to the North Carolina Bar Association and the bar more broadly.
Yeah.
I guess partly because your career began with doing a little bit of everything, and you thought of yourself as a lawyer.
Right.
Yeah.
When I came out of law school, you were a lawyer. You weren't a defense lawyer or plaintiff's lawyer or this or that. You were a lawyer, and you expected to be in court when the court was in session in Rockingham. You expected to be there. And I learned some of my best lessons of going to court and watching other lawyers and sitting in the lawyer's room and listening to Chubb Sewell and some of those old lawyers tell stories.
And so I guess that would be one piece of advice you'd pass along to young lawyers is you've got to watch good lawyers do it.
That's right, you do indeed. That's the only way you can learn.
And so staying in your office and shuffling papers won't teach you how to try a case.
No, it won't. It won't teach you anything.
So, so that'd be one point for the young lawyer. Another point might be that your career is liable to change a time or two over a long career.
Career is subject to things over which you have no control. I had no control over Willie Smith getting killed, yet it changed my entire practice of law.
Well, now you got family as well, and I'm sure you made time for family in the midst of it, though it had to be tough with the load of cases you were carrying through.
Yeah, I'm afraid the family suffered some, but there's a lot more emphasis now on family than it used to be. The law was a jealous mistress, and you had to stay with them.
I do recall a professor in law school using that phrase about the law as a jealous mistress, and how we would, as boys in the class, would spend more time the rest of our life with a law book in our hands than with a woman in our arms.
That's right. And,
exactly. There's certainly some truth in that. The way it was. The way the law was at that time. But there's been some shift, and maybe that's for the good.
That's very much for the good. Yeah, it is.
So you've been active with the bar. You've been active and carried an enormous litigation load with the law firm. What have you done, or how did you go about trying to keep balance in your life and to keep yourself and your head on straight? What did you do when you weren't working?
I loved to hunt and fish, and flew an airplane a good bit. I was a private pilot. I owned 3 planes in my life and thoroughly enjoyed that. And get out in the field, hunting and fishing was good.
So, but there needs. I assume that your thought is there has to be something. You can't just grind at the office nonstop.
You have to. Yeah, you have to. Also, I did a good bit of civic work in Rockingham. I was a lot more active there civically than I've been in Raleigh. I came to Raleigh and got bogged down in law practice and didn't get involved civically as much as I had been in Rockingham. But in Rockingham, I did a little bit of everything civically too. I was president of the Rotary Club, the JCs, the hospital board, the Chamber of Commerce. I got involved in everything down there. Moved to Raleigh and didn't do as much here of the civic activity. I was active with the Red Cross for a while on their board of directors, but didn't do much other than that.
Eventually, the mentoring of a raft of lawyers in the law firm began to take a big part of your time as well.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
How did you go about managing all the cases that you had and mentoring a lot of young lawyers at the same time?
Well, you do them both together. You mentor them by letting them work on your cases. I would try to get a young lawyer involved in each of my cases and have them try to go to trial with me.
Sometimes insurance company's not going to pay 2 lawyers to go to court when one will do. Did you find that nevertheless sometimes the lawyer was going to need to go with you, or else they were never going to learn how?
Yeah, that's right. I tried the case better by myself, but it was better to have somebody along so that they could learn how to do it.
And
we'd be listening to a witness, and I'd tell the young lawyer, "You take this one on cross-exam." First time he'd heard about it, he'd panic.
you can't worry about it but so much when he has no warning.
That's right, that's right.
How is a young lawyer today supposed to learn to try cases if everything's going to settle at mediation, or
They can't. You he can't be as good a trial lawyer as he used to be. And there are some good ones now, but they don't try as many cases as used to. We used to try everything.
Right. And,
Now there's emphasis on settlement, and mediation, and arbitration, and not to avoid trial. Of course, there's so many cases now that the court couldn't handle them all if they didn't have some way of getting rid of them early.
of course, clients need to have cases resolved,
They do.
and our purpose in society is to help get disputes resolved.
That's
but,
right.
Trying cases sure is fun sometimes.
It is fun. I miss every day I'm not in court.
We've talked about a lot of things here. You've talked about several mentors that you had that were extremely important in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Who are some of the colleagues that you've had of your own in your own age group that you particularly enjoyed trying cases with and against, or practicing law with, and the like?
Well, other than my own law firm, I've enjoyed working with Bob Clay and Jerry Alvis. They were both good trial lawyers. Joe Yates was a good trial lawyer. One that I had most fun with was Joe Moore, your former partner. He was a great guy.
Yeah.
Good trial lawyer. Fun to try a case. It used to be fun to try a case. You'd sit down and you'd plan to have a good time as well as try the case well.
Well, that again helps you with the mental balance.
It does.
In it all.
It does.
Did you, during that time, you've had good judges and poor judges? Some defense lawyers would, I suppose, say they'd just as soon have a bad judge because there'd be more mistakes made and you could straighten it out on appeal. What was your experience about good and bad judges?
There were good and bad judges, but I'd much rather have a good judge and try it right the first time. We've had relatively few appeals. We get rid of them at the end of them. We've had some cases appeal, but not many. There've been some good judges here. Pew Bailey was a good judge. Pilton Godwin was a good judge. Frank Dupree was a great judge. Frank Dupree was a great judge, federal judge.
Did you find that the quality of law practice in Raleigh was, with the exceptions of like Mr. Leith and whoever, was that the quality was superior in Raleigh to what you were encountering in a lot of these other towns?
I don't know if that's true. There were good lawyers in small towns. Yeah.
Well, particularly now with the research that can be done through computer, there's less excuse for a lawyer not around Supreme Court library and not having access.
Right.
Anybody can get the research today.
And when we started out, we didn't even we had manual typewriters, didn't have electric typewriters. That typewriter, the harder you hit, the blacker it came out.
And your secretary at the time did not want to do that thing over and over again either, not when it was going to have to be typed manually.
That's right. That's right.
Computers have been good, but they've not been an unmixed blessing. So if you were going to do it all over again now, to paraphrase a Barbra Streisand song, would you do it all again, given another chance? And what would you do different?
I don't know that I'd do anything different. I have looked back on my life many times and said, I don't remember a single day that I didn't look forward to going to the office. I didn't know I wanted to be a lawyer when I started out. I didn't know that at the end of my second year that I wanted to be a lawyer. But I'm glad I did, and in retrospect, I don't know that I would change anything.
Well, I would think that one could hardly ask for more than to look back on 50, 60 years and find only a few things you would love to do, have a do-over.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd do any of them over.
So what are the things that you would say to the young lawyers starting out to try to keep as a touchstone? Or
Touchstone is to be as good as your word. Don't get a reputation of being dishonest. Get a reputation of being honest and straightforward, and you'll get along well. And I think that's a reputation I got early on, and I've kept, and I am proud of that.
And rightfully so. It certainly should have been. Well, Jim, I've had a wonderful time sitting here talking about what the law practice was and what it is, and I think that last statement of yours about what the most important thing for the young lawyer
Right.
is that reputation for honesty and candor in dealing with the lawyers and judges, other lawyers and judges.
Right.
It's probably about as good a finishing note as we could hope to have, and so on behalf of the bar, I want to express our appreciation to you for a career well spent, for the good legal work done, for the role model you've been and are, and for giving us this time here this morning to share a little bit of your reflections with the now 5,300 lawyers that are in Wake County.
What's your bar number, incidentally?
Well, my bar number is 1502.
Mine is 378.
But a lot of the people watching this film are going to have some number like 30,000 or whatever.
That's right.
And it's vastly different.
Yeah.
Vastly different. But thank you for your time, and we will share this, and I know it will be really valued by people in your firm and by folks in the bar.
I appreciate it. I've enjoyed reminiscing with you. It's been fun.